Hello everybody, we are back testing the Monolith THX AAA Portable versus the iFi Micro iDSD Black Label. Yes, both of these units are vastly different as we discussed last time, and when we were discussing it last time we were actually talking about the bass. And there are indeed differences in the bass response between these two devices, and so today we shall move on to the mid section and whether these two devices present the mids, vocals, things of that nature, differently from each other. As I've said before, the Monolith THX is a cleaner, more analytical sounding amplifier DAC. It's fairly neutral, I would say. And there's no coloration that I would be able to point to. Like, I can't say that the treble is peaky. I can't say that the bass is harsh or anything like that or distorted, because that's not the way that the Monolith really presents itself. On the other hand, you have the iFi. It has undistorted bass, but it has more emphasized bass. And during our test in the last video, I told you that the bass emphasis is probably another 2 to 3 decibels over what the bass is on the Monolith. So there's the actual difference there. So let's find out what the mids can actually do. I have 3 songs queued for our mids test: Why Am I Like This by Orla Gartland, Dreamer by Charlie XCX, and Sun by Sleeping at Last. We have both units plugged into the computer via USB. They are then plugged into, from their headphone out, into this A-B switch. The A is going to be the Monolith, B is going to be the iFi, and our headphones of choice today are, once again, the Neumann NDH-20. I have to use these since I have them, and I'm trying to sell these now because, you know, they're okay. They're not fantastic headphones, but they're okay. All right, so let's just get started. Let's start with our first song, which is Why Am I Like This? Let's restart here. Make sure that we are on the Monolith, which we are not. Okay, we're now on the Monolith, and we're going to go up to negative 25 decibels to start. And here we go. And negative 25 decibels is fairly quiet. I mean, you can hear everything. It's just not particularly loud. This is the type of volume you would listen if you're just by yourself in a quiet room. You don't want to listen to it too loud, so you turn it down a little bit. That's about the volume I would say it is. So let's increase to negative 15. And at negative 15, I can tell you that her voice is crystal clear. No harshness, no peakiness. It sounds crystal clear. The guitar frequency is clearly different from the mids, her voice, so the guitar isn't melding with her voice at all. Let's increase the volume again, so let's go to negative 10. And even at negative 10 decibels, her voice is very, very clear. And you could hear some of the sibilance in her voice, but it's not harsh. It's not overemphasized. When she has a sharp intake of breath like that, you can hear it. It doesn't get muffled. You hear the drum strikes here, but they're very light drum strikes. It doesn't sound muffled. It doesn't sound as if there's a long reverberation. It's just tunt, 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 tunt. That's how it's moving forward with the drum. Some amplifiers and DACs will emphasize the drum a little too much, and so the drum will linger a little bit longer, that resonance. But on the Monolith, it goes fairly fast, very fast transients. Okay, so let's turn on the volume again. Let's go back to negative 25 or so. And now we're going to switch to the iFi. Okay. We are now on the iFi. Let's restart this song. Here we go. And we're going to start off at 9 o'clock, as you can see. And 9 o'clock is a little bit quieter than negative 25 was on the Monolith. So I'm going to increase. So just about 10 o'clock-ish, maybe. It sounds close to what the Monolith did at negative 25. Obviously, the problem is you don't know where we're at based on numbers because it doesn't have an LCD screen. There's no way for you to know. The guitar sounds a bit more emphasized on the iFi than on the Monolith. Let's increase the volume to about 11 o'clock. Her voice sounds less thin. So on the Monolith, it sounded just a little bit thin, whereas on the iFi, there seems to be a bit more presence there. So by thinness, I mean, it seems like it's pulled back just a little bit, but there's a bit more emphasis in the mids on the iFi. I would say probably another couple of decibels at least. And now you have the drums coming in slowly. And the drums still sound fairly light, but slightly different. There's maybe another couple of decibels emphasis on the drums on the iFi versus the Monolith. The resonance is slightly longer. So, you know, he hits the drum and it goes to just a little bit longer reverberation, whereas on the Monolith it went dun, 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 dun. Just a slight difference. Not a night and day difference, just A and B, you can tell. No harshness, no peakiness. I could say that when the bass and the mids interact, there is a little bit of melding there. Not a whole lot, just a tiny bit. So it's not as crystal clear. There's no hardline separation between the bass and the mids as there is with the Monolith. So more analytical on the Monolith and a little bit more, I would say, musical with the iFi. Let's turn on the bass effect here. And with the bass effect, with the vocals, doesn't do anything at all. I'm going to do the 3D. And with the 3D, you do get a slightly wider presentation. So regular is here. That's the regular sound stage. And with the 3D effect, it's a little bit wider. So just a little bit. And there's a tiny bit of stretching out of that mids frequency. So where it sounded a bit thicker than the Monolith, when you turn on that 3D effect, it sounds a bit more like the Monolith because it sounds like it's being pulled back, that mid emphasis. Instead of being 2 decibels more than the Monolith, it sounds just like the Monolith with that 3D effect. Now, one thing I've said before in the last video is that these filters here, the bass and the 3D effect filters, are just fantastic. I think iFi does a really good job with their filters. I mean, it's a personal preference, but when you switch these filters on, it's a minor change. It's a couple of decibel change, and that's really all you want. When you put on the 3D effect, for example, like I said, it's here typically, and then you go a little bit wider, just a tiny, tiny bit, but it's noticeable. Unlike Sensurround on the Monolith and other amplifiers that have this fake surround sound or widening of the soundstage effect, it just sounds so artificial and becomes tinny sounding and metallic and thins out the entire song. And you really don't even get the extended soundstage. But with the iFi, I think they kind of get the middle ground here where they increase the soundstage noticeably just enough. And also it pulls back some of the vocals and some of the emphasis in the bass. But it doesn't do it to such a degree that it reminds me of the Monolith Sensurround thing, where it doesn't sound as if the whole song just got thinned out, it's stretched out, it sounds tinny. It doesn't get to that level. It just sounds a little bit more pulled back and tiny bit wider. So there's a give and take there. Okay, so let's go to the Monolith again. And now we're moving on to Dreamer by Charlie XCX. Now, if you know anything about Dreamer and my aversion for it, the reason I'm doing Dreamer now is because I want to tell which amplifier makes this song sound the way it is, which is harsh and unbearable. Which one of these two amplifiers treats it as the way it is, and which one of these two rounds off the harshness, pulls back some of the treble energy, smooths out the vocalist harshness, graininess, and presents it a little bit more enjoyable. Okay, so let's start with the Monolith, and here we go. And at negative 25, again, it's fairly quiet, so we're going to have to increase the volume. We're going to be at negative 10. And at negative 10, you start hearing this synth sound that comes up, and then there's going to be this auto-tune nonsense like right here. And sparkliness, harshness, her voice is just really grainy. The bass is really pulled back, so it doesn't sound harsh or distorted, but there's no real bass emphasis at all. Her voice is like I said, grainy and harsh. And there's this really weird echo effect to her voice. So that's not a backup vocalist. It's just an echo effect that they added in the song. Let's increase the volume to -5. And it's very loud. This is louder than I would ever listen to any song to. And you could just hear the harshness and the treble energy in her voice and the sibilance. It gets really harsh really fast. So I'm going to just stop. I can't listen to the song. Again, the reason I choose Dreamer on some occasions is because I want to test really harsh, poorly recorded songs and figure out how headphones or amplifiers, DACs present the music. I would say the Monolith treats it as it is. It just presents the harshness, it presents the graininess, it presents the sibilance. It gives you what the song is, which is a terrible song. Now let's switch to the iFi and let's find out if the iFi can present the song differently. So let's switch. Restart, and here we go. We're at 9 o'clock. And 9 o'clock again is very quiet, so we're going to increase to about 10. 10 o'clock, it's, I think, about -15 on the Monolith, so let's increase to 11. You hear that synth music that's coming up, but it's not as clean as on the Monolith. There's a bit of rounded offness. That treble energy is rounded off a bit with the iFi. And now you hear her voice, and there's a big difference between the iFi and the Monolith. Her voice definitely doesn't sound as grainy and as harsh as it did on the Monolith. And I'm going to increase to 12. 12 o'clock was I think -5 on the Monolith. Very, very loud. And her voice is not harsh. At least not as harsh as it was on the Monolith. There's a clear difference. I would say it's a night and day difference between the Monolith and the iFi on this particular song. The bass emphasis is also there. You hear a bit more lingering in the bass, but still no distortion. I'm going to bring it down to about 11 o'clock. I'm going to turn on the bass effect. And you can hear that lingering effect with the bass effect. And it's really cool. So here's what happens. So the bass effect really becomes more present and prevalent if you have that subwoofer kind of whom, whum, whum type of sound. You've probably all, at least in the United States, you've heard somebody in the car next to you with their stupid subwoofer full bore. Whum, 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 whum. That's the lingering effect I'm talking about. Okay, keep that in mind. That type of lingering. So this song has that subwoofer type effect. It's not to the same degree as the guy next to you in the other car, but that's the effect that you're supposed to hear. It's boom, 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 right? Boom, 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 boom. That's the underlying bass here. Now, with the bass effect off, you don't hear the rum, rum. You hear the boom, boom, boom. So it's a much more subdued bass. Now turn on the bass effect, you suddenly hear the rumbling. Boom, boom. And that's the cool effect that you can hear with the iFi. That's exactly where the filter really shines. So let's keep playing, and I have the bass effect off. I'm going to turn it on right now. Yeah, you could just hear a tiny bit more lingering, and it's just clean. No distortion. Yeah, just a little bit. Let's turn on the 3D effect. Yeah. So the 3D effect, what it does with this song is that it increases the sounds just a little bit on this song, but it also adds a bit more graininess and a bit more harshness. It's almost like it's adding a bit more treble energy that wasn't there before. And for this song, I wouldn't use the 3D effect. It just brings back the harshness that's already prevalent that the Monolith was presenting. So on this test, I think it's easy for me to say that the iFi does present this song a bit more easy to listen to than the Monolith, and the Monolith just presents it more accurately with all the harshness that's already built into the music. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now let us switch back to the Monolith. And we are going to go to Sun by Sleeping at Last. All right, let's see where we are. Let's go to -25. Here we go. And the song starts off with this piano. It is such a soft, smooth piano. So let's increase the volume to -15. We're at -15 now. The male vocalist sounds crystal clear. The piano frequency is well separated from his voice, so they're not melding at all. He sounds probably about 2 steps ahead of the piano. There's nothing else playing, so it's the piano and him. Now, right around now, about 34 seconds in, you start hearing something else in the right ear cup, and it sounds like a string instrument of some sort, and it's picking up in volume slightly, a little by little, but his voice is dead center, crystal clear. Let's skip ahead to about midway. We get a crescendo. Crescendo should hit any moment now. Let's increase the volume to -5. And here comes a crescendo right now. He goes testify. You have the guitar, the piano, you have the drum, and he's crystal clear. No harshness in his voice at all. You can clearly hear what he's saying, even while all the instruments are playing. So there's no melding effect. There's no muddiness at all. Okay, let's bring this back down to -25. And let's go to the iFi. Okay, we're on the iFi, and let's bring this down to 9 o'clock. Here we go. And I think that the piano, when it starts off on the iFi, has a slightly longer reverberation, just a little bit longer. It's noticeable A and B, but I don't think it's such a huge difference for me to say, oh my goodness, the piano sounds totally different on the iFi. Just a tiny bit longer. Minuscule. Let's increase to 10 o'clock. And by the way, I've been on turbo mode. I always keep this thing on turbo because I just want that extra power. His voice is still clear, but I would say there's a bit more emphasis in his voice on the iFi than is on the Monolith. So probably another 1 or 2 decibels on the mid-range than on the Monolith. The piano doesn't meld with him, but there's just a bit of lingering from the piano and some of the drums that come in that starts melding with his voice, but he's still audible and he's still clearly heard. Right about now, when he's testify and you have the drum, you have the piano, you have the guitar instrument, and his voice just a little bit less clear than on the Monolith. It just melts a tiny, tiny bit. Where on the Monolith, it's a clear separation of all the instruments and the vocalist. Let's skip ahead real quick. And we're going to get to the crescendo any second now. And just any moment now. I'm going to increase the volume to about noon. And he goes, right now, testify. And I'm going to turn on the bass effect. Yeah. There's a slight longer reverberation in the bass when you turn on the bass effect. Let's turn on the 3D effect. So on this song, the soundstage doesn't seem to increase at all with the 3D effect. And there's just an increase in volume in the treble region instead of an actual increase in the soundstage with the 3D effect on this song. his voice is still clear, but with the crescendo and everything playing, it's just a little bit less separated than on the Monolith. And so the guitar, the drum, the piano start melding a little bit more, and so the instruments are harder to separate. Their tonalities are harder to separate than on the Monolith. So the Monolith is a little bit cleaner in that respect, and the iFi just melds things together a bit more, makes it, if you want to say, a little bit more muddy, then that would probably be an accurate way of presenting it. Okay. So there we are about the mids response. Let's talk. As I've said before, both of these both of these amplifiers and DACs are vastly different from each other. There's nothing really similar about these, right? iFi says that the Monolith is portable. It's not. I mean, technically, yes, it's battery powered, so yes, it's portable, but it's not really portable. On the other hand, it's extremely powerful where the Monolith isn't, and it has some fantastic filters that on or off that seem to work really well, at least in my opinion. I think that there are some people who are going to turn on the bass effect and go, that's not enough. I understand, which is where you have the Monolith, where you can, in fact, increase the bass, you can increase the treble, you can play around with the EQ to your heart's content, you can set parameters, you can save settings, all that stuff that the iFi simply can't provide. But features aside, when you're talking about sonic, right, the sound, as I've said this before, the Monolith has a cleaner, clearer, better separation of instruments than the iFi. The iFi tends to meld things together. It's a warmer sounding DAC amp. The bass is elevated just a few decibels. The treble is brought back down a little bit. There seems to be a slight mid-range emphasis as well that the Monolith does not present, whereas the Monolith might sometimes sound too analytical, or the vocal may sound thin in comparison to the iFi. The iFi has a presentation of the mids that's a little bit more forward, so it's more in your face than on the Monolith. Now, I'm talking about degrees of difference here, not a night and day difference. In the bass response, I said the iFi has probably another 2, maybe 3 decibel increase in the bass. For mids, I would say it's probably about 2 decibel increase, 2 to 3 decibel increase in the mids. So if that's what you like, you want this warmer presentation, a bit more melding of frequencies, a little bit more laid-back presentation, then the iFi is definitely an easy DAC to listen to compared to the Monolith. But if you want to hear the separation of instruments, you want to have all the detail you could possibly get using a portable amplifier, then the Monolith is also a very, very good option that the iFi simply can't compete with. So sonically, vastly different devices. You can't compare apples to an orangutan, right? That's what it is. It's apples to an orangutan. It's not apples to oranges, because these things really, they live on the same planet, but they really don't live in the same jungle, right? They don't do the same exact thing. They're just so very different. I hope that this has been of some help. If you've been considering between these two products and you just don't know, hey, should I get the iFi? Should I get the Monolith? I hear great things about the iFi, but I hear good things about the Monolith. What's what? Bottom line, the Monolith is a cleaner sounding amplifier and DAC. It's got more menu features. The iFi is an easier portable to listen to. It's warmer sounding, more, quote, analog in some respects. It's very dead simple to operate, and it's much, much more powerful than the Monolith. So it can drive any headphone you have, whereas the Monolith is probably going to struggle with some types of headphones. I hope that if this has been of some help, you will consider donating a couple bucks to me on Patreon. Just for the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you could help support me and my channel so that I can continue to save up money to buy new and old products to review for you. If you have any questions or concerns, leave them in the comment section below. Otherwise, I will talk to you all soon, and we will wrap up this comparison with the treble response, hopefully within a couple of days. Take care.